From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Below zero temperatures are expected through Tuesday. These are extremely dangerous conditions, and we strongly urge people to heed the warnings and take the necessary precautions to stay safe.
It's called the Arctic vortex. As a chill wind blows across the United States, how could global warming be connected to such record cold? We'll speak with Jeff Masters of the Weather Underground and Peter Dykstra of the Daily Climate. But first, we go to Utah.
And just to have this opportunity in Utah, in our home state, because we could have gone to California, we could have gone to another state, but we're Utahns, and that is huge. That's huge. We're pioneers. I mean, you know, it's so awesome.
Just weeks after same-sex couples in Utah began exchanging marriage vows, the U.S. Supreme Court stays a decision from a federal judge that had cleared the way for the marriages. We'll speak to a just-married couple. Their union is now in legal limbo. And we'll look at how conservative groups linked to the Koch brothers raised over $400 million in their attempt to sway the 2012 election. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. One of the great mysteries of the Vietnam War era has been solved. In 1971, a group of peace activists broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and lifted files that helped reveal the FBI's elaborate program of illegally spying on political groups. The documents, given to journalists at the time, provided the first hints of COINTELPRO, the FBI's secret program to infiltrate, monitor, and disrupt social movements. The burglars called themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. They were never caught. But decades later, a number of them are coming forward for the first time. The idea for the burglary came from William Davidon, a physics professor and leader of civil disobedience against the Vietnam War. Davidon died last year. Also involved were a social worker named Bob Williamson and John and Bonnie Raines, a married couple with children. Convinced the FBI was infiltrating peace groups, they hatched a plan to stage the break-in on the night of a major championship boxing match. Another of the burglars, Keith Forsyth, described his motivation in a video produced by Retro Report.
Once I got over the shock of thinking that this was the nuttiest thing I'd ever heard in my life, I'm like, this is a great idea, because we're not going to make any allegations. We're going to take their own paperwork signed by their own people, including J. Edgar Hoover, and give it to the newspapers. So let's see you argue with that. I definitely see parallels between Snowden's case and our case. What we revealed changed public opinion, which is why the laws were changed. If revealing ourselves is going to get people arguing with each other about what the FBI did then and what the NSA is doing now, I think that's a good thing.
Forsyth was arrested in a separate action months after the burglary by a group of FBI agents who were monitoring the raid of a draft office in Camden, New Jersey. His role in the burglary was never revealed until now. Ahead of the break-in, Bonnie Raines cased the FBI office while posing as a college student. While there, she confirmed the office lacked a security system. Raines describes her role in the video.
I was to call the office and make an appointment as a Swarthmore student doing research on opportunities for women in the FBI. So they gave me an appointment. I tried to disguise myself as best I could, and I went to say goodbye, and I acted confused about where the door was, and that gave me a chance then to check out both rooms and know where the file cabinets were.
FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover assigned nearly 200 agents to investigate the burglary. In particular, they were told to hunt for the mysterious college girl who'd come to the office. But the case was closed when the statute of limitations expired 5 years later. The story is told in a new book by Betty Metzger, a former Washington Post reporter who received the documents from the burglars at the time. 3 other burglars have chosen to remain anonymous. Record cold temperatures are blasting the Midwest and eastern United States again today as a so-called polar vortex has descended as far south as Texas and Florida. In Chicago, it was negative 16 degrees Fahrenheit Monday, or as low as negative 42 with the wind chill. In northern Minnesota, it was negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the actual air temperature, not the wind chill. Here in New York, the temperatures plunged roughly 50 degrees in a matter of hours on Monday. We'll have more on the cold and its ties to climate change later in the broadcast. The United States is ramping up its delivery of military equipment to help Iraq battle militants who've overrun parts of Anbar province, including the city of Fallujah. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney said the United States would deliver Hellfire missiles and surveillance drones as part of a holistic strategy to oust the militant group known as the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant.
Now, this situation remains fluid, and it's too early to tell or make conclusions about it. But we're accelerating our foreign military sales deliveries and are looking to provide an additional shipment of Hellfire missiles as early as this spring. These missiles are one small element of that holistic strategy, but they have been proven effective at denying ISIL the safe haven zones that it has sought to establish in western Iraq.
Israel's given final approval to a new round of settlements in the occupied West Bank as Secretary of State John Kerry wrapped up his visit to the region Monday. The plan includes 272 apartments in 2 different settlements. Israel had reportedly held off on announcing new settlements in order to avoid embarrassing Kerry during his visit. Meanwhile, thousands of African migrants gathered in Tel Aviv for a third day today to protest Israel's indefinite detention policies and demand asylum and work rights. The United Nations warning conditions in Central African Republic are rapidly deteriorating, with nearly 1 million people now displaced by sectarian violence. Heavy fighting erupted last month between Christian militias and Muslim rebels who'd seized power in a coup in March. Jeffrey Feltman, UN Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs, said more than 750 people have been confirmed dead in the capital Bangui alone. He warned of a deepening humanitarian crisis.
According to the latest information, approximately 2.2 million people in the CAR need humanitarian assistance, close to half of the population of the country. 1 in every 2 inhabitants of Bangui has sought refuge outside their homes. Their number is estimated at approximately 513,000, of whom 100,000 are at a makeshift camp at the airport.
The Supreme Court has halted same-sex marriages in Utah. Nearly 1,000 LGBT couples have gotten married since a federal judge struck down the state's ban on same-sex marriage late last month. But Monday's decision puts those unions in limbo while Utah defends the ban before an appeals court. The case could end up before the Supreme Court. We'll have more on the ruling after headlines. A federal judge has struck down Chicago's ban on handgun sales. The 2010 measure banned gun shops within the city and barred gun owners from leaving home with their weapons. U.S. District Judge Edmund Chang ruled the ordinance went too far. The number of murders in Chicago has dropped to the lowest level in half a century, but Chicago still leads the country in homicides, with more than 400 committed last year. The Senate has confirmed Janet Yellen as the next chair of the Federal Reserve, replacing Ben Bernanke. Senators voted 56 to 26 to confirm Yellen, with 11 Republicans joining Democrats in her favor. Yellen's the first woman to head the central bank in its 100-year history. Liz Cheney, daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, has abandoned her plan to run for the Republican Senate nomination in Wyoming, citing serious health issues in her family. A recent poll showed incumbent Senator Mike Enzi had a 52-point lead over Cheney. Her campaign was marred in part by a public spat over same-sex marriage with her sister Mary, who's a lesbian and married. In Texas, a hospital is keeping a brain-dead woman on life support against the wishes of her family because she's pregnant. Marlise Munoz collapsed in late November, likely because of a blood clot in her lungs. At the time, she was 14 weeks pregnant, a stage when the fetus is months away from viability. Doctors say Munoz has no brain activity, but the hospital in Fort Worth is citing a Texas law they say forbids removing a pregnant woman from the life support. The woman's husband, Eric Munoz, told a local ABC station his wife explicitly told him she never wanted to be on life support.
We talked about it. We are both paramedics. We've seen things out in the field, and You know, we both knew that we didn't want to be on life support. We reached a point where, you know, you wish that your wife's body would stop.
Despite her family's pleas, the hospital reportedly plans to keep Munoz on life support for the next several weeks until the fetus is potentially viable. At least a dozen states have statutes that force women to stay on life support against their previous directives if they're pregnant. A former high school football player who raped a 16-year-old girl in Steubenville, Ohio, has been released from juvenile prison less than a year after his conviction. Malik Richmond received a year-long sentence last March. A second teenager convicted in the case, Trent Mays, is serving a 2-year sentence. The case drew national attention following the emergence of images and social media postings from the night of the attack. Jury selection begins today in the trial of a former hedge fund employee accused of orchestrating the largest insider trading scheme in U.S. history. Matthew Martoma, a former portfolio manager for SAC Capital, is charged with conducting illegal trades based on inside information about the development of an Alzheimer's drug. Prosecutors say the scheme earned SAC Capital $276 million in profits and averted losses. Last year, SAC Capital, which is owned by billionaire Stephen Cohen, agreed to plead guilty to fraud and pay a record $1.8 billion to settle charges of systematic insider trading. The former head of the Federal Communications Commission is starting a new job at the secretive private equity firm, the Carlyle Group. Nicknamed the Ex-President's Club, Carlyle's roster has included a long list of powerful figures, including both Bush presidents. Carlyle owns a majority stake at Booz Allen Hamilton, the military contractor that employed Edward Snowden. Julius Genachowski, who led the FCC for 4 years under President Obama, will serve as a managing director and partner specializing in telecommunications. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily, independent, global grassroots news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org today. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.